So we are assigned to watch the video Time for School 3 Part 1, and it's all about education around the world. And at the beginning they gave a couple of statistics. One of them that I thought was really interesting was that 75 million kids have no school to go to around the world, and even more are struggling to stay in school because of the cost. And the kids in the video, they realize that education is key and that any dreams they want to fulfill, it requires an education. So in the video they track 7 different children in 7 different countries and their lives and what they go through and how they go about getting an education. And it's from 7 different countries, including Japan, Romania, Brazil, India, Afghanistan, Benin, and Kenya. And in part 1 of the video, it just goes through 4 different kids, one from Afghanistan, one from Brazil, one from India, and one from Japan. So I'll talk a little bit about each one. The first one is a 16-year-old girl from Afghanistan who just wants to go to school. And growing up in Afghanistan, that's one of the most dangerous places on earth to live, especially for Shugufta, who is a girl, and the Taliban tries to keep girls like her out of school. And hundreds of schools in Afghanistan have been shut down because of them. And she goes on to tell a little bit about how the security has increased at her school and how they have to check their purses before they get into school for any bombs or anything. I just thought that was really crazy because I couldn't imagine anything like that happening here in the United States, where we don't get checked for bombs, that we don't have to worry about things like that. And I just kind of think that's really scary for them, and that's really cool that they want to keep going to school even though they have things like that going on. But Shugufta, she studies everything she can and wants to further her education as far as she can, even having 13 kids in her family. When she has to go home after school and she doesn't have any time to study, she has to do housework and everything, and she doesn't have time for herself or to study or anything like that. And especially in Afghanistan with all the war, which is a huge disruption for them. I like the quote that she said at the end. She said, "People who don't go to school live like blind people," which is really true. And so the next kid is from Brazil, and his name is Jefferson. He's 11 years old, and his dream was to become a soccer player and to finish schooling. And where he lives is also pretty dangerous. A lot of invasions happen and a lot of people die from bullets and gunshots and everything. And they have a program in Brazil called Bolsa Familia, which helps poor kids stay in school, and they pay for it as long as the kids keep going to school, and then they get to stay in school. So Jefferson was doing really well, and he actually skipped a grade and got to, because he was so smart, he got to go a grade up. And him and his siblings, their mom was out of employment for many years, finally found a job, and she was working at really early times and wasn't able to be home with her kids. And so Jefferson grew up, and even though he skipped a grade, the school decided to hold him back again because he wasn't mature enough to go to the middle school with the older kids. And so he had to go through the 5th grade graduation, not being able to graduate with the kids he wanted to graduate with, which was really hard for him. But he didn't quit, and he wanted to keep getting his education further. So the third one is Neeraj from India, who's 15 years old. She lives in an area where women marry young, they do all the housework, and they rarely have the opportunity to go to school. So Niraj, she dreamed of going to school. That was her dream, and she wanted to go to a big school to study when she got older to become a teacher. And she had to work all day, so she had to go to work at night, or to school at night, and while all the boys didn't do any work and they just played around all the time. So she struggled with going at night, but she really enjoyed it. And then there was a drought that happened in India, and she wasn't able to keep going, and then they shut down the school because not a lot of people were able to go, and so she had to go to day school, which she wasn't up to the level of the kids her age, so she had to go with a bunch of younger kids who would tease her because she was a lot bigger than them and older than them, and she was at the same level as them. So she was really embarrassed, and she ended up dropping out, even though she had the dream of becoming a teacher and going to school, to a big school. And the last one was a boy from Japan whose name is Ken, and he's 12 in 6th grade. He's an only child, and the schooling in Japan is really great. It's like it's one of the most demanding school systems in the world. And Ken wanted to grow up to be a professional baseball player or a school teacher. And school was his world, and he was graduating to go into 6th grade, and it was a really big deal for him, and his world was just becoming even bigger. And so one thing I thought was really interesting about all of these kids was that they all had educational dreams. They all wanted to grow up and finish their schooling and become something great, and getting an education was their top dream. And also I thought it was kind of interesting that in all the countries, girls did most of the housework and the hard work and everything, and boys really didn't do much. And so all of these kids, there's tons of pressure to drop out of school, which is really overwhelming for them, but it's great that they want to keep going further with their education. And the world has made a promise that 189 countries committed to provide every child with a free primary education by the year 2015, and there are still 75 million of the world's children that are still waiting, which is an incredible number, and I feel like those kids need to be helped, and they need to be able to go to school also, because all of us here in the United States are so fortunate that we're able to get the education that we want. So, yeah.